So when you think about government security, you probably imagine this single rock-solid system, right? But what if I told you that two departments, both protecting our nation's biggest secrets, use the exact same security tool, but with totally different rulebooks? Today, we're diving into the world of the polygraph and a story of two standards that has some really serious consequences for the people involved. And this quote, this is from a real Department of Defense employee. It really gets to the heart of the matter. This isn't just about abstract policy, it's about real people whose entire careers are hanging in the balance, all because of a machine they just can't seem to pass. And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? I mean, the National Academy of Sciences, these are top scientists, have major doubts about the polygraph. So how on earth did we get to a point where this one controversial device can literally make or break a person's entire professional life? Let's get into it. To really get a handle on the system, you have to start with the people inside it. So let's begin with a personal story that shows you exactly what is at stake here. 5. Just let that sink in for a second. That is how many times a single Department of Defense employee was put through a grueling polygraph interrogation. Can you even imagine the amount of stress and pressure? Having your integrity, your whole career, questioned over and over again by the same inconclusive process? And after all that, the results were just a mess. They kept switching back and forth between no opinion, which means the machine couldn't even get a clear reading, and significant response, which is this super vague finding that basically just means stress. There was no confession, no evidence of any wrongdoing, just contradictory data from a machine. And yet, the result for this person was punishment. So you've got to be asking, how can this even happen? Well, the answer is kind of shocking. It all comes down to a major difference in the rules between two of our most vital government agencies, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. And to really get the scale of this, just look at the numbers. The Department of Defense, the DoD, runs the biggest polygraph program in the entire U.S. government, period. More people go through their process than any other agency. So you'd think they would have the absolute tightest, most protective rules, right? Well, let's take a look. Now, on the other hand, let's meet what you might call the gold standard. This thing, 10 CFR Part 709, is an actual federal regulation. Congress itself stepped in and made this rulebook for the Department of Energy, the DOE, and it's packed with safeguards to protect employees. This is basically the benchmark for how to do this correctly. And here it is, the absolute core of the issue. See, the DOE is governed by that law from Congress. But the DoD, with its massive program, nope. It just operates under its own internal policies. What that means is no legally mandated safeguards, no independent oversight, and, this is a huge one, no legal requirement for medical exemptions for conditions we know can mess with polygraph results. And believe me, this isn't just a difference on paper. This lack of protection has a real, tangible, and honestly devastating human cost. Let's go back to what happens to people caught in this two-tiered system. You see, if you take someone who already deals with something like anxiety or PTSD and stick them in a high-stakes polygraph, well, it's not just unfair, it's a recipe for disaster. The stress from the test itself can throw off the results, and that creates this awful, vicious cycle. The machine flags their anxiety as deception, which leads to more tests, which creates more anxiety. It's a trap with no way out. And here's the tragic end to the story we started with. That relentless cycle of interrogations and suspicion, it took its toll. The employee was eventually diagnosed with anxiety and PTSD that was caused by the process itself. They were medically retired, a whole career of dedicated public service gone. Not because of any wrongdoing, but because of a flawed process that lacked the most basic human safeguards. But this is so much bigger than just one person's story, as awful as it is. This gap in policy has really serious implications for everybody. For fairness, for science, and even for our own national security. And let's be crystal clear here. The criticism of the polygraph isn't just coming from people who've had bad experiences. This is the conclusion from the National Academy of Sciences, one of the most respected scientific groups in the country. Their words, inherently unreliable, especially for the kind of screening the government does. So let's just break down why this is a problem for all of us. First, scientific integrity. The DoD is treating results from a shaky tool as gospel. Second, fairness. You're punishing loyal, cleared professionals based on a machine, not on facts. Third, national security. You've got two critical agencies with wildly different standards for protecting secrets. And finally, It just chips away at public trust in the whole security clearance system. Now, the good news here is that when a problem is this clear, the solution can be clear too. There is a very direct way to fix this dangerous inconsistency. And the solution is not to reinvent the wheel. It's actually really simple. Create parity. The sources are basically arguing that Congress should just step in and require the Department of Defense to adopt the same kind of legal protections that have already been working for years over at the Department of Energy. And this isn't just some vague idea. There's a real, concrete plan. The proposal is for Congress to mandate 5 specific things. Make DoD's policies into real, binding federal regulations. Ban punishments based only on a polygraph result. Require independent review of these decisions, guarantee medical exemptions, and make them report to Congress for oversight. It's a logical, complete fix. And so we end up right back where we started, with a really fundamental question. The Department of Defense has the biggest, most important security program in the entire government. It's responsible for protecting all of us. So why should it be allowed to operate with the absolute weakest protections for its own dedicated people? It's a paradox that really, really needs an answer.